Good morning, everyone. It's a true story told by a rabbi in Cincinnati. His name is Rabbi Michael Paley. This story happened in 1998 when Bill Clinton was being impeached for the scandal with the Lewinsky affair, and he was visiting in Cincinnati with a group of rabbis, and he was meeting with, a group of clergy to talk about, his situation spiritually. And at the end of the meeting, he was shaking everyone's hand, and Rabbi Michael Paley was there, and Rabbi Paley said to Bill Clinton, "Mr. President, you need to do Teshuvah." And he was about to explain to him what Teshuvah is, when Bill Clinton asks Rabbi Paley, "Do you mean Teshuvah the way Rabbi Soloveitchik understands it, or do you mean Teshuvah the way Rabbi Cook understands it?" Rabbi Paley was taken aback, and he said, he was shocked to see the president knew, and he said, "Of course, I mean the way Rav Cook explains Teshuvah." So Bill Clinton said, "Then we should talk." And after the meeting, they went into a side room, and they talked for 15 minutes about the two different approaches to Teshuvah. What are the different approaches of Teshuvah? Soloveitchik, who was, of course, the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva University, a great Lithuanian brisker Rav, explains Teshuvah and understands Teshuvah in the way of remorse, regret, and changing one's ways to the point that the former person is unrecognizable because they've completely transformed themselves, to the point that if the same opportunity presents itself, they don't repeat the same offense again. Which, by the way, is not an easy thing to accomplish. That's why we need 40 days to work on it, because you can't change habits overnight. I'll tell you a personal example I've learned by experience. Right here on Sunset Avenue, they changed the road. It's no longer two-way, it's one-way. So for 20 years now, since the shul moved to this corner, I would pull out of the parking lot and swing a right when I want to go to Publix or wherever. And even though they changed the direction, only going eastbound for 2-3 weeks now, I keep on turning right and having to back up, make a U-turn. Why? Because it's part of my instinctual nature. When I come out of parking, I swing a right when I want to go to Publix. It takes time for the brain to rewire that there's a new direction now. You can't go that way. So when you want to change direction in life, it takes time to break old habits and change your patterns of behavior. So Rabbi Soloveitchik says Teshuvah means you've changed your patterns of behavior to the point that the old negative habits are no longer a part of you. Now you instinctually go in the right direction, you do the right thing, and when the same opportunity, temptation comes up, you resist and you don't do it. However, Rav Kook, who was more of a Kabbalist, more of a mystic, who was the first chief rabbi of Palestine in those days, who died in 1935, Rabbi Soloveitchik passed away in 93, but Cook passed away half a century earlier. He explains a more Kabbalistic approach to Teshuvah. What is the real meaning of the word Teshuvah? The word Teshuvah means to return. Rabbi Cook says Teshuvah means to go back to your real self. You don't have to change, you just have to return to who you really are, because every person is pure. On the inside, we all have a pristine soul and a neshama from God that's untainted. And everything we've done wrong is only a superficial external layer. It's not the true self. You just have to go back to your true self, your pure, innocent self. Which means that every person, whatever mishagash, shtick, issues we have, anger, jealousy, lust, whatever we have, that's not really who we are. The real self is the inner neshama. We just have to go back to that. And that was the one Rabbi Paley told Bill Clinton that he favors, and they discussed this for 15 minutes. Just conclude with the story. The Baba Rebbe, when he came to Manhattan after the Holocaust, he started a shul in Manhattan. Later he moved to Brooklyn. And in the early years, it was hard to get a minyan, even on Shabbos. So he would send out his son to find a minyan. And there was always this Jew who was a Holocaust survivor who would be on the park bench on Shabbos. He would sit there in the Shabbos morning, and he would call him in. He would help make the minyan. One day they didn't have a minyan. The Baba Rebbe says to the son, "Go find that Jew on the park bench." He goes out, he comes back without the Jew. He says, "Where's the Jew?" He says, "I saw the Jew on the park bench Shabbos, and he was smoking a cigarette. I saw a Jew smoking on Shabbos. I didn't want to bring him to shul to make the minyan." The Baba Rebbe said, "Go back and bring him, because he wasn't smoking a cigarette." The son said, "Batata, I saw he was smoking a cigarette." The father said, "No, he wasn't smoking the cigarette. He said, but I saw with my own eyes he was smoking. His father says it wasn't him that was smoking the cigarette. It was the Nazi who murdered his whole family in the concentration camps. He was smoking the cigarette. The Jew wasn't smoking the cigarette. Meaning to say, it's not him. It's not the real Jew. It's other external causes like the Holocaust. He called him in. He counted him for the minyan, even though he was smoking, and he participated in the minyan. Many years later, when the Baba Rebbe was in Brooklyn, he gets a visitor one day in his office. A man comes to see him with his son. His son's getting married. He wants the Baba Rebbe to marry, to officiate at the wedding. He says to the Rebbe, do you remember me? He says, no, who am I? He says, remember that Jew on the park bench you would always call in for the minyan? Your calling me in Shabbos after Shabbos slowly brought me back to Yiddishkeit. I became observant again, and my son is now a yeshiva boy, and he's getting married, and I want you to officiate at the wedding. And the Baba Rebbe was right. It wasn't the Jew that was smoking the cigarette, it was the Nazi. In life, sometimes we act out of character, but we have to know that's not our true character. Our true character is, like Rav Kook says, Teshuvah means to return. You're not changing and going away from yourself. You're going back to your true self, which is pure and holy, because it's a part of God.